In the tranquil village of Port, Romania, 1934, twin sisters Eva and Miriam Moses were born into a world soon to be engulfed by darkness. Their early years were filled with the simple joys of rural life, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. By 1944, the Moses family, along with countless other Jews, were forcibly transported to the Auschwitz concentration camp. Upon arrival, a Nazi officer inquired, "Are they twins?" Their mother hesitated but answered truthfully. That single word sealed their fate. Eva and Miriam were torn from their mother's grasp, her desperate cries the last memory they had of her. The twins were thrust into the cold embrace of Auschwitz, where Dr. Josef Mengele awaited. Known as the Angel of Death, Mengele had a particular interest in twins, viewing them as ideal subjects for his cruel experiments. Eva and Miriam were assigned to Barrack 14, a place where innocence was stripped away, replaced by fear and pain. Their days were regimented with relentless examinations. 3 times a week, they were forced to stand naked for hours as every inch of their bodies was measured and compared. The other days were reserved for more invasive procedures. Eva recalled the torment. "They tied both of my arms to restrict blood flow, then drew large amounts of blood from my left arm while injecting unknown substances into my right. The pain was excruciating." One such injection left Eva gravely ill. Her limbs swelled, her skin burned with fever, and red spots covered her body. Mengele dismissed her condition, stating she had 2 weeks to live. But Eva's determination was unwavering. Confined to the barracks, she crawled to a water faucet, each movement a battle against death. "I must survive," she whispered to herself, a mantra that carried her through the agony. Miraculously, Eva recovered. Reunited with Miriam, they continued to endure the daily horrors. They witnessed other twins subjected to grotesque surgeries, blood transfusions, and mutilations, many not surviving the ordeal. On January 27, 1945, the Red Army liberated Auschwitz. The twins, among the few survivors, emerged from the camp, their bodies frail but spirits unbroken. Post-war, Eva and Miriam faced new challenges. Eva moved to Israel, serving in the army, before settling in the United States. In 1984, she founded Candles, an organization dedicated to locating other survivors of Mengele's experiments and educating the world about the atrocities committed. In a controversial act, Eva publicly forgave the Nazis, including Mengele. She believed that forgiveness was a path to healing, stating, "I forgive them for killing my parents, taking away my family and childhood, and turning my life into hell." Eva Moses Kor passed away on July 4, 2019, during a trip to Auschwitz. Her legacy endures through her tireless advocacy and the countless lives she touched with her message of resilience and forgiveness. In the heart of Athens, Greece, during the early 1940s, a young girl named Lola Hassid Angel lived a life filled with family warmth and cultural richness. But the encroaching shadow of Nazi occupation was about to transform her world into a nightmare. At just 7 years old, Lola, along with her family, was forcibly deported from their home. Crammed into overcrowded cattle cars, they endured a harrowing journey, deprived of food, water, and basic sanitation. Their destination, the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Germany. Upon arrival, Lola was thrust into a world of unimaginable horror. The camp was a cesspool of disease and death, with emaciated bodies strewn across the grounds, and the air thick with the stench of decay. The young girl quickly learned that survival required resilience beyond her years. Lola recounted witnessing the arrival of prisoners from Auschwitz, including Anne Frank and her sister Margot. These new arrivals were skeletal, their eyes hollow, bearing the marks of unspeakable suffering. The camp's conditions were so dire that even the most basic human needs became luxuries. Starvation was a constant torment. Lola described the agony of watching fellow inmates, including children, succumb to hunger and disease. The lack of medical care and sanitation turned minor ailments into death sentences. Each day was a battle against despair and the ever-present specter of death. In a twist of fate, Lola and her family were placed on a death train as the Nazis attempted to evacuate prisoners ahead of the advancing Allied forces. The train meandered aimlessly, its passengers trapped in squalid conditions, until American troops intercepted it, bringing liberation to its occupants. Now 88 years old, Lola resides in Athens, dedicating her life to educating others about the Holocaust. She speaks to school children, sharing her story to ensure that the atrocities of the past are never forgotten. Her testimony serves as a poignant reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Spectral Stories. In the tranquil village of Chirpa, nestled in Czechoslovakia, young Berta and her sister Katarina were immersed in a life of simplicity and familial warmth. Their father, a skilled tailor, instilled in them the art of sewing, a craft that would later become their lifeline. The serene landscape, dotted with modest homes and the rhythmic hum of daily life, painted a picture of normalcy. However, this peace was shattered in 1942 when Nazi forces invaded their homeland. The sisters, along with their family, were forcibly deported to the notorious Auschwitz concentration camp. The train halted with a screeching jolt, its metal wheels grinding against the tracks as the doors were flung open. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning flesh and the oppressive weight of despair. Berta and Katarina, along with countless others, were herded off the train, their belongings stripped away, their identities reduced to mere numbers. The infamous gates of Auschwitz loomed before them, bearing the chilling inscription, Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free. Amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged. Berta's sewing skills caught the attention of the camp's authorities. She was selected to work in the Upper Tailoring Studio, a clandestine workshop where a select group of Jewish women were tasked with creating garments for the wives of Nazi officers. The irony was not lost on them, prisoners forced to craft luxury for their oppressors. The studio became a sanctuary of sorts, a place where the hum of sewing machines provided a temporary escape from the horrors outside. The workshop was a hive of activity, the rhythmic sound of sewing machines punctuated by whispered conversations and shared glances. Berta and her fellow seamstresses worked tirelessly, their hands moving with practiced precision. Despite the oppressive conditions, they found moments of solidarity and subtle resistance. They sabotaged garments when possible, sewing in mistakes that would be difficult to detect, a quiet act of defiance against their captors. Each day in the camp was a battle for survival. The constant threat of death loomed large, casting a shadow over every action. Berta often reflected on the psychological toll of her experiences, the trauma of witnessing death, the loss of family members, and the daily struggle to maintain hope weighed heavily on her. Yet, amid the darkness, the act of sewing became a symbol of resilience, a thread connecting her to her humanity. In January 1945, as Soviet forces advanced, Auschwitz was abandoned by its Nazi guards. The prisoners were left to fend for themselves, many suffering from starvation and disease. Berta, weakened but determined, was liberated by Soviet troops. The joy of freedom was tempered by the loss of so many, the memories of which would haunt her for years to come. After the war, Berta emigrated to the United States, where she rebuilt her life. She married, had children, and became a grandmother. Yet the memories of Auschwitz never faded. In her later years, Berta became an advocate for Holocaust education, sharing her story to ensure that the atrocities of the past were not forgotten. She passed away in 2021, leaving behind a legacy of resilience and the enduring power of the human spirit. In the early 1920s, Derykin, also known as Dericin, Poland, was a quiet town where Gertrude Boyarski lived with her family. Her father, a butcher and house painter, was considered a useful Jew by the Nazis, allowing the Boyarskis to reside in a guarded building just outside the Jewish ghetto. In the early 1920s, Derichen, also known as Deresen, Poland, was a quiet town where Gertrude Boyarski lived with her family. Her father, a butcher and house painter, was considered a useful Jew by the Nazis, allowing the Boyarskis to reside in a guarded building just outside the Jewish ghetto. However, the tranquility shattered when, on July 24, 1942, the Nazis massacred 3,000 to 4,000 Jews from Derichen. Amidst the chaos, Gertrude and her family managed to escape into the nearby forests, seeking refuge and survival. In the forest, Gertrude's family lived in a makeshift camp. To prove their commitment to the resistance, her father, brother, and other Jews launched a daring attack on the town's police station, capturing weapons and ammunition. In the forest, Gertrude's family lived in a makeshift camp. To prove their commitment to the resistance, her father, brother, and other Jews launched a daring attack on the town's police station, capturing weapons and ammunition. Despite this act of defiance, Gertrude witnessed the brutal killings of her mother, father, sister, and brother by German soldiers and anti-Semitic Poles. Devastated but resolute, she sought to join a Russian partisan unit. Initially, the unit's commander, Bulak, was skeptical of her abilities. To prove herself, Gertrude stood guard alone in the woods for 2 weeks, enduring isolation and constant fear. Impressed by her determination, Bulak accepted her into the unit. As a partisan, Gertrude engaged in various sabotage missions against German forces. In one notable operation, she and a fellow partisan volunteered to destroy a wooden bridge used by the Germans. With limited resources, they procured kerosene and straw from a nearby village and set the bridge ablaze. Despite German gunfire, they successfully destroyed the bridge, showcasing their bravery and resolve. As a partisan, Gertrude engaged in various sabotage missions against German forces. In one notable operation, she and a fellow partisan volunteered to destroy a wooden bridge used by the Germans. With limited resources, they procured kerosene and straw from a nearby village and set the bridge ablaze. Despite German gunfire, they successfully destroyed the bridge, showcasing their bravery and resolve. For her valor, Gertrude was awarded the Order of Lenin, one of the Soviet Union's highest honors. After the war, she married a fellow partisan, and they immigrated to the United States in 1949. Settling in Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and later West Palm Beach, Florida, Gertrude dedicated her life to educating others about her experiences. She spoke at schools and institutions, emphasizing the importance of resistance and the resilience of the human spirit. Gertrude passed away on September 17, 2012, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, at the age of 90. Section Reflection and Legacy. Duration, 30 seconds and 5 seconds. Scene 1, Gertrude's Reflection Time Code, 000200000022000. Visual. Stock footage of an elderly woman reflecting with a voiceover of Gertrude's words. Gertrude, Vo. I was the only one who survived. Why? Why me? I'm always asking that question. I was the only one who survived. Why? Why me? I'm always asking that question. Her story serves as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring fight against oppression. Super-spectral stories on screen text, watermark text. In November 1944, a freezing gust swept across the ramp at Auschwitz-Birkenau as 12-year-old Naftali Furst and his family were pushed from a packed cattle car. The journey from Sered labor camp in Slovakia had been suffocating. No food, no space, no light. And now, they stood at the edge of hell. The platform, known to survivors as the Judenrampe, was where life and death were decided in seconds. SS officers barked orders, children screamed, dogs snarled, and standing among it all, the cold, calculating figure of Dr. Josef Mengele, the man who chose who lived and who died with the flick of a finger. Miraculously, Naftali, his brother, and their parents were directed toward forced labor, not the gas chambers. What they didn't know at that moment was that Heinrich Himmler, one of the chief architects of the Holocaust, had ordered the destruction of the Auschwitz crematoria just 1 day earlier. The Nazis, fearing the rapid advance of Soviet forces, were attempting to erase evidence of their crimes. By a twist of timing, by a mere 24 hours, Naftali's life was spared. Auschwitz was a world designed to erase identity. Naftali's name was stripped away, replaced by a number tattooed onto his forearm, B14566. He was housed in barracks barely fit for animals, forced into labor, exposed to freezing temperatures in threadbare clothing, and fed a starvation diet of watery soup and stale bread. Just enough to keep the prisoners alive for work, but never enough to let them truly live. He witnessed people disappear, taken to the infirmary and never seen again. Every cough, every stumble, every moment of weakness could mean death. Yet somehow Naftali endured, driven by an unexplainable force, perhaps hope, perhaps instinct, perhaps the will to see his brother's face again tomorrow. In early 1945, as Soviet forces neared Poland, the SS began evacuating Auschwitz. Naftali and his brother were among the thousands forced on death marches through the snow, treacherous journeys where exhaustion or frostbite was often punished by a bullet. They ended up at Buchenwald concentration camp in Germany, another name etched in the Holocaust's dark legacy. Here, Naftali fell gravely ill with tuberculosis. Malnourished, weak, and barely able to walk, he was placed in Block 66, a children's barrack hidden by the camp's underground resistance to protect the youngest prisoners. There, packed among over 900 other children, Naftali held on to the slimmest thread of life. Every day was a battle against the cold, against starvation, and against despair. April 11, 1945. The sound of gunfire cracked in the distance. German guards began to flee. Buchenwald prisoners led by resistance fighters took control of guard towers. Then came the tanks. The Americans had arrived. Naftali, skeletal and exhausted, lay in his bunk when the liberators entered. He was one of the youngest survivors. A U.S. Army photographer captured the moment, snapping a now famous photo of the boys crammed into their wooden bunks, wide-eyed and hollow-cheeked. Among them, Naftali Furst. That image would become one of the most recognized photographs from the Holocaust. A portrait not just of survival, but of innocence, shattered. After weeks in hospital care, Naftali and his brother returned to Bratislava, not knowing what, or who, they might find. Most Holocaust families never reunited. Many survivors lived their entire lives wondering what happened to their parents or siblings. But against the odds, Naftali's family was whole. His parents had survived, hidden, scarred, but alive. The Fursts embraced, weeping, healing, but knowing that nothing could return what had been taken. In 1949, like many European Jews, the Furst family sought a new beginning. They emigrated to Israel where the scars of war ran deep, but the promise of renewal burned brighter. Naftali began to rebuild. He discovered photography, a medium through which he could freeze truth, beauty, and memory. He married, raised children, and worked as a press photographer, capturing life through a lens even as he carried the shadows of death in his past. But for 60 years he kept silent. The trauma was too deep. German, once his mother tongue, became a language he refused to speak. Auschwitz remained locked inside him. Eventually, silence became a burden. Naftali realized that the stories of survivors were vanishing. With each passing year, fewer voices remained to speak for the millions who never had a chance. And so, he spoke. Naftali Furst. For 60 years, I didn't talk about the Holocaust. For 60 years, I didn't speak a word of German even though it's my mother tongue. He shared his memories in schools, museums, interviews, and memorials around the world, including at Yad Vashem and with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Naftali Furst. It is our duty in the name of the men, women, and children who were murdered to tell our stories again and again. Naftali Furst lived a life defined by tragedy, but also by resilience, hope, and purpose. From the icy ramp of Auschwitz to the liberated barracks of Buchenwald, from silence to testimony, his journey was not just survival. It was transformation. It was remembrance turned to legacy. In his name, and in the names of millions we remember.